everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime musky conditions? If you're like me, it's Gramp Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. Hi everyone, here it is. It's another Monday afternoon and we're live 5 at 5 here on Facebook, and we're going to be talking some fishing. We got some neat people lined up. We're going to be talking about some very interesting subjects. So I hope that everybody's having fun out there. I hope everybody's catching fish. This weekend wasn't the most pleasant ordeal for us anyway. Hey, listen, do me a favor, okay? You folks are watching. There's been like 8,000 of you people watch our show so far. I want to say thanks to everybody that's taken the time to tune in and watch what we're doing. But there's a comment section associated with these programs. Send us some comments, folks. Let us know what you like or what you don't like. And here's another one. There's a gal that's helping me out big time. She works behind the scenes. You guys don't know her. Her name is KC. So if you would, shout some grats to KC, man. Give her some heads up. She's working hard to keep this thing going. She's lining up our guests. She's doing things like that. So it's really critical that we have her on board with us. And hey, again, that's what those comment sections are for. Don't be afraid to use them. Don't be afraid to do that, folks, because that's what this is all about. You know, it's sharing information. It's talking about what worked and what didn't work for you. That's what we're trying to convey here. Like I said, we got some interesting people, and it's just going to take me about 2 seconds here, and we're going to bring up one of those interesting people. He comes to us from East Bethel, Minnesota. Zach, do we have you online?
Yes, you do.
Hey, we got Zachary. Zachary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. First of all, before we get into any questions and answers, give us a little backdrop on how your Mother's Day opening weekend went. Everybody targets those walleye in Minnesota. I mean, it's a big deal. So let's talk a little bit about your weekend. How'd it go?
It was very cold and snowy. We went up to Mille Lacs, and we launched the boat on Liberty Beach, and the parking lot was full, so we had to park on the street. And we got out there, and it was cold and cloudy for about the first hour that we were out there. We got some flurries on and off, and then a huge snowstorm hit. And you could slowly see boats in the shoreline disappear, and it got to the point where you couldn't see 50 feet out in front of the boat. And so we ended up packing up and leaving. We had 2 inches of snow on our boat. And a 20-minute boat ride took us 2 hours. And if we didn't have a GPS, we would have been screwed.
Wow.
We got to the boat landing, and there were people still putting boats in.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So
the walleyes were hitting hard.
They were hitting hard. Yeah, well, the walleyes, you know, they don't mind that cold stuff in the spring. You know, some of these other fish do, but the walleye don't. The walleye do just fine in that water temperature. They've got a bunch of rituals going on, so they're pretty comfortable up there doing their thing. When you were out on the water and it was snowing, Jesus, how did you find your way back without a GPS? You'd have been, like you said, totally lost.
Yeah, I mean, we even with the GPS, and we couldn't see. I mean, the snow was hitting you in the face so hard that you couldn't barely open your eyes, and we ended up getting a little close to the shore, and it came out of nowhere, and we had to backtrack and go back towards the middle of the lake, so we didn't hit any rock piles, I mean, we ran past buoys that we didn't know until they were behind us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rock out there too. It sounds to me like you were on the southern end of the lake, and that's a big body of water. So, what kind of presentations are we using?
I started out with a jig and a leech, and I caught my first 3. I went back to back on that. Then that slowed down. We've seen a couple of guys flip in shiners and jigs, and then I ended up moving to just a 5-foot snell with a white bead on it, slowly dragging a leech with that, and caught quite a few doing that.
Now,
so it was a slow presentation.
I was going to say, I heard you say slow a few times. It made a big difference, didn't it?
Yep, because, I mean, we started out at about 2.5 miles an hour with spinners on windies, and that didn't do anything for us. And then we just started going about 0.5, 0.8 miles an hour, and that's where they started hitting them.
Amazing, amazing. Well, it's one thing to be in Minnesota. It's another thing to be in Mille Lacs Lake in a snowstorm on opening weekend. Minnesotans, they get pounded with this bad weather on Mother's Day weekend. I keep telling everybody that I know that we need to move the opener of Minnesota back the week before the Wisconsin opener.
Yeah. But it's Minnesota, it'll change.
Yeah, you got that right. There's no question it'll change. Give it 5 minutes and go from there. I couldn't help but notice when we were exchanging some photos back and forth, young man, you're a multi-species fisherman. You put a lot of time in the water, and it's not necessarily for just walleye. I mean, you do some pretty cool things. You sent us an absolutely gorgeous picture of a sturgeon. Where are you sturgeon fishing?
So we go out to Wisconsin on Yellow Lake. Their season is just a month long,
yep.
And we go towards the end of their season, and you just sit on that lake and throw crawlers on the bottom. And I think we caught 7 sturgeon, and the biggest one was 70 inches.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is really cool. We used to run a tournament circuit called the WPMA, and we had our Tournament of Champions on Yellow Lake a number of times, I think, at least once for sure. And being that it's a judged tournament with bump boards and what have you, you had to sit out there and wait for the anglers to catch fish. Well, we got to see the sturgeon jumping. I mean, they were jumping everywhere out there. It was an amazing sight.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy, just crazy. And then I see, too, that you spend a little bit of time chasing the slimy ones, the catfish. You like doing the cats.
Yeah, we go out to North Dakota on the Red River up by Drayton, North Dakota, and we target them big channels.
Yep. You get the 30-pounders?
I have not got a 30-pounder yet. I think my biggest is like 22 or something.
Well, those are nice fish, though. They're super nice fish. So
they play hard.
Did you have any questions? Because I can see you fish the other creature, the ones with the teeth.
Yeah, I do it all. I mean, me and my buddy always try and plan a bucket list of whether it's trying to beat our personal best from the year before or target new species. Like this year we want to go out to Lake Superior and target some trout and some salmon. The muskies we do once in a while. We go to Eagle Lake, I believe it's in the city somewhere, and then do a lot on Mille Lacs and Forest Lake.
Oh yeah, well, we don't live too far from Forest Lake, so we get a chance to fish the muskies on Forest on occasion. And Mille Lacs has been brutally mean to me in terms of muskies. There's some giant fish there. I'm not a troller. I like to cast, and I guess the casting heyday for the muskies on Mille Lacs was virtually a decade ago. So I just haven't had the opportunity to hook up one of those bruisers out there. I know they're there. There's some really big fish there.
I see people pulling them out every time I'm out on the left, and they're trolling 6 miles an hour with plugs.
Yep, they are. They're moving fat. I mean, they really do. We went out there with some friends of ours and pulled baits for a little while, and it's just not my cup of tea. And I think if you stuck with it long enough, the rewards would be there. Any suggestions you can give our listeners or our guests, our viewers on the show? I know you get a lot of talent with a rod and reel in your hand.
I'd just say be patient and set goals for yourself. I mean, if you want to catch them big ones or try and, widen your experience. Because I was strictly, close to home, bass fishing, and then me and a couple of buddies just decided, let's go take some trips somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a lot better experience once you can go out and target big trophy fish on different bodies of water.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I traveled for nearly 40 years shooting Simply Fishing and Thunder on the Water. And one of the things that lodge owners, when we would sit with lodge owners and we would talk to them, one of the things that I found most difficult was getting people to break their rhythm. In other words, leave the place you're fishing day in and day out and broaden your horizons. Get on waters that you don't know and go spend some time learning to fish, not necessarily run into the same spot you caught fish on, but learning to fish. And I've had a lot of people over the years come to me and say, man, you've given me some great advice. I got a chance to go up to Eagle Lake, or I got a chance to go to Lake of the Woods, and holy smokes, Rocky. And they come away with a totally different impression of the sport. I think it's so cool. It's just really
and then you run into some crazy experiences too, whether it's weather or just the sights that you see.
Yep.
I mean,
all crazy. Listen, Zach, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know I didn't answer any questions for you, but you sure shared a lot of information with us. And boy, oh boy, you and we need to chat, because I want to go up there and fish some of those smallmouth on Mille Lacs Lake. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So again, I want to say thanks. I want to say thanks from everybody here at 5 at 5 Live, Simply Fishing and Fishing Sticks, because quite frankly, it's guys like you that come on the air, bring your personality, bring your interest to the TV, bring it to the program. That's what makes it all happen. So again, my hat's off to you, young man. Thank you very much. Can we get you on the show again in the future?
Yeah, anytime.
All right, we're going to do that. No question about it. Thanks again.
Yep, thank you.
All righty. Hey, everybody. We've been talking a little bit about the value of traveling around, going to different locations and trying your skill sets on different bodies of water. Well, there's a body of water. It's called United States, Canada, North America, and it's got hundreds and thousands and millions of lakes. And that being said, we have started to organize a group of professionals. These are the CAN pros, we call them, the Concierge Angler Network pros. And we're starting to put this group together, and but I'm telling you, stay in touch with what we're doing, because we're going to bring these people to the forefront as we go forward. And we're going to give people an opportunity to not only hook up with these individuals, but also go online and do virtual guide sessions with them. It's really, really cool. I've been doing the virtual guide thing now for a couple of years. And when people get online with you and start talking, it's an amazing deal. So as we move on in this show, we're going to give you more information on it. So don't be alarmed. You're going to learn a lot more about the Concierge Anglers Network. In the meantime, we're going to tell you who's helping us in the show, and I'm going to call our next guest to the program. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, I got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. All right, we just rang his number. Let's see if he's there. This live stuff's kind of fun.
This is Travis.
Hey, it is Travis. Travis Bob Mehsikomer at 5 at 5 Live. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself, sir?
Well, I am so honored. I'm doing fine. I'm so honored to have you on the show. It's a lot of fun. This is our 4th show, and we plan to do 400 or more. So we want to welcome you aboard. So
thank you very much.
No, it's our pleasure for sure. Did you have I know you have a hobby that's outside fishing, but my staff has told me to leave that hobby alone, because I share in that venue of sports as well, and they don't want me to get off subject. So that being said, tell me a little bit about your weekend, and if you have a question, pop it to me, because that's what this is all about.
My weekend, I stayed local to the St. Cloud area. I went out to the Horseshoe Chain in Cold Spring, and I've fished that lake quite a bit, and it's got a unique to me bite as far as what you do out there to target walleyes specifically. A lot of times we catch walleyes fishing like a bass fisherman, casting Rapala X wraps, Husky jerks, shadow wraps, as opposed to the traditional jig and minnow kind of bite that is typical early. Now, you can catch them on a jig and a minnow out there, but typically I spend a lot of time either trolling or casting jerk baits, shad wraps. Started off Saturday, got to the public access about 4:30. Got to travel probably about a half mile through a no-wake zone before you get out to the main body of water out there. And immediately just looked at the water temperature, and we had 56-degree water, and I'm immediately thinking I can catch them trolling on a crankbait.
Uh-huh.
So I put on a Hot Tiger number 5 shad wrap, and I probably didn't go 100 yards, and I had my first walleye in the boat. And I'm like, well, this is going to be a great day. And by 6 o'clock, I had 3 of them, and then it kind of got slow. I'd pick up, as always, fishing out on the horseshoe chain, there's channel catfish out there. So you catch a few catfish. Yes, yeah. You catch a few catfish trolling out there. I caught a couple pike, and then I kind of got into another little pot of walleyes, and I caught 2 more in like 10 minutes. And then it was kind of a grind, and I went around different spots, tried different techniques, pitching a jig and a shiner around some bridges, around some sand to weed transition areas, caught a couple more pike, and that pretty much put my day to a wrap. I didn't have snow like Zach did up in Brainerd, so I didn't have to battle that, but we did have some pretty good wind that came up, probably around 20 miles an hour. But the horseshoe chain, I think there's like 7-8 lakes that you can navigate to, plus the whole entire Sauk River, so there's a lot of places to hide, and you can still fish.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then I went out yesterday after breakfast, probably got to the water about 10 o'clock. And I, like the third cast I made with a Rapala Husky jerk, I hooked into a 32-inch muskie, which is the first muskie I've caught out there. Kind of a unique little bonus fish. I think it was about 5 years ago or so, they started to stock some muskies out in the horseshoe chain. And that's the first one I've caught, and I probably fished the lake 8 to 10 times a year. Typically in the spring and in the fall. I kind of avoid it in the summertime. Usually, go fish Mille Lacs and some other lakes that I like to fish, Vermilion, Leech Lake, and whatnot. So, but for me, I think I had a pretty good opener. Caught fish doing what I like to do, trolling crankbaits, casting crankbaits, and I had a plan. I put together a plan and kind of executed it the best I could.
Oh, absolutely. You certainly did. There was no question to that whatsoever. I did note that you were very sensitive to the water temps. So do you pay attention to those elements? Is that something that you do on a regular basis?
Absolutely. Again, without getting into the other hobby, I follow weather a lot.
Yep.
And that kind of dictates where I'm going to fish.
Yep, I agree.
And one thing to me, and maybe you can share some of your thoughts on this, but my experience, river systems, which the, horseshoe chain is, I don't think those fish are as sensitive to major weather changes as opposed to like a lake, especially like a clear water lake.
Yeah.
And
all fish have preferences and they're seasonally governed, but like you say, some of these fish, their habitat forces them to do certain things, and they become more adjusted to the wide swings or the variables like a river system would bring on as opposed to a lake. I think you're right.
Yeah, and the other thing I try to do is I watch the moon phases, so the weather and the moon phases, and I try to be on high percentage spots during certain, the majors and the minors, and really pay attention to that. Now here's what happened for me on Saturday. Saturday, I worked basically like the first break on one particular lake of the horseshoe chain that I was on, and I noticed that the fish were kind of, when I would catch a walleye, it would be like on a point that kind of came out in that 8 to 10 foot area I was working.
Yep.
So I just made sure when I was coming up to these, higher percentage spots, I had my boat set up, and I knew my lure was going to go across the tip of that point.
Yeah, so you're strategically hitting it.
Yes, sir. And now yesterday when I was out there, the wind had shifted, and the fish that I did catch, whether it was that muskie, the couple walleyes that I did catch, and the northern pike, they were on the inside turns. So they simply just moved from the point to the inside turn.
Yep, they'll do that. Absolutely.
Yep.
And you had a total change in weather from Saturday to Sunday. Your sun popped out. You got a little bit better condition, if you will, for these fish to move into those areas. So that's brilliant.
Yes.
That's brilliant the way you picked it apart.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to go out tomorrow night after work, and I'm expecting them to be in a little bit different location, but they're still going to be there. The water's not that warm. From Saturday to Sunday, we actually lost 2 degrees in water temperature, and that kind of dictated the bait that I was going to use too. Like Saturday, caught them on a shad wrap.
Yeah.
So like the minnow style. Well, the Sunday when I went out, I was using a Husky jerk. So now you go to like a longer profile that was slower, and my speeds were slower. So that's kind of the games you play when you do the trolling thing. And I caught a couple fish yesterday on a jig and minnow, and that was something I could not buy a bite on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I really do. I had a dear friend of mine that's passed away, Frank Schneider Jr. Frank and I had an opportunity to go fish some big walleye one time, and I like throwing storm thunder sticks, and basically the same concept you're dealing with. And in one day, we had 10 fish over 10 pounds on sticks. And when you hit those things casting, when you hit those things casting and load up a heavy action bass rod, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, they hit like a freight train when they hit those trips. That's for sure.
Yeah, they do. Hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to meet you. It's been a pleasure to get you on board. Please stay in touch with us. Pass the word to your friends, if you will. What we're doing right now is for everybody to learn. It sounds like you're well on your way to making it prosperous when you're in the boat, and that is key. So I really appreciate it. And that other hobby you got? Oh, yes, boy. I love it.
Well, thanks a lot, Bob, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All righty. I appreciate you coming on. We'll get you back.
Thanks.
All righty, folks. Like I said, the Concierge Anglers Network, it's designed, folks, for you. It's designed so we can introduce you to professional fishermen and give you an opportunity to reach out to them, if you will, in a number of different ways. And we've compiled this list. The list is growing. If you're an angler out there anywhere, bass, muskie, walleye, northern pike, it doesn't matter what it is, stripers, you name it. If you're into this game, you're into the sport, and you want to become a Concierge Angler Pro, please get a hold of me at bob.m@fishandstickstv.com, and let's get you on board. It's really a cool deal. It really is. I just can't say enough about it. It's how people are going to learn going forward. All right, folks. I'm going to take a second here while this graphic is still up. You guys can read it. And while we're doing that, I'm going to bring on our next guest, because this gentleman is very interesting. Very. He's been around. I've met him. Pretty cool guy, to be perfectly honest with you. And he makes what I think are some of the most beautiful flies, if you will, and I don't call them flies, they're works of art. They're pretty cool. So let's see if we can get them on the line. Mike, we got you?
Yep, I'm here, Bob. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. I want to introduce to you Mike Lund. Now, like I said, this guy he's a fly tire extraordinaire, people. But what I'm about to show you is going to blow your mind, because this guy makes stuff that, well, if you're a smallmouth fisherman and you're watching this show tonight, I'm telling you flat out, you need to record the phone number that's going to be up here in a second. I don't care if you're fishing in Georgia, Alabama. I don't care if you're fishing in the Virginias. I don't care if you're in Kentucky, Tennessee, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Canada. I don't care where you're fishing. The second thing I'm going to show you tonight that this guy brings to you needs to be in your smallmouth box. I'm telling you flat out. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're talking about? I'm going to show them the creature that we're talking about. There's a little smallmouth that we're all chasing out there. And this is the creature that Mike chases these things, and he calls them a sculpin, okay? That's you fly fishermen's garbage. I mean, I call them food for smallmouth. Oh, my goodness. Look at these things. They are amazing. Define for us these sculpins, as you call them, Mike. They're incredible.
So sculpins are actually a very major prey item for smallmouth bass, and even trout too. They live in a lot of the lakes and river systems, all across the country. There's different species. Common species are the deep water sculpin found all over the Great Lakes and the tributaries there. And you have the mottled and slimy sculpin. Their biogeographical distribution is all the way up to Alaska even. So, but their smallmouth prey heavily on these things because sculpin, they live on the bottom,
right,
on the rocks.
Right.
And they have their body shape is very similar to a goby.
Yep.
That's that round invasive forage fish in the Great Lakes.
Yep.
They have similar pectoral fin construction. And so therefore they swim very poorly. They don't swim too well. So they kind of just hop along the bottom from rock to rock, and they're a very easy prey item for smallmouth because they don't have to expend a huge amount of energy to chase them down.
Right. Now you were telling me, Mike, that you can make these in various weights. So if a guy were a fly fisherman, he could throw a lighter presentation, and if a casting fisherman wanted to get his hands on these to go win a bass tournament, whoa, look out.
No, that's the beauty about a sculpin pattern. You can tie it for fly fishing, and there's times where fly fishing ain't going to work if you need to get down really deep or depth is the main challenge. That's where a hair jig variation comes into play. And I wanted to break down this design very quickly for you. So those sculpins you're looking at, they have 4 to 5 articulations in them. So they move like a snake back and forth in the water. And there's a famous fly fisherman in the East Coast named Blaine Chocolate. And he designed this fly series called the Game Changer. And it's basically simply a multi-articulated fly series where you tie your materials on shanks ranging in lengths from 10 all the way up to about 50 millimeters in length. And the more shanks you incorporate into the fly or hair jig design, the more it's going to move erratically back and forth, like a Zara spook or
right. Yeah, that
articulation. Suspended jerkbait.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the nice thing about that sculpin pattern. You can tie it as a hair jig for smallmouth or even as a fly for swinging across the current broadside and stripping it with little strips. So it's very effective.
So I'm curious now. This is probably out of taste. I should be doing this, but if bass fishermen wanted to get a hold of you to get these things in the bass sizes, a little bit heavier weights and stuff, how much do they cost? What's the price point on something like this? Because I want some. I'll tell you, to be honest with you.
It depends on the variation. If you look in that box, I also have some straight inline models and right articulated models. But the Game Changers typically range in price from about $8 all the way up to $20. It depends how long you want it, how many articulations. And if you go online, there's a lot of good tires out there to tie these similar patterns too. But You can find me on Instagram at Muskie Flies, and that's Muskie spelled Musky. My website is currently under construction right now as I'm working on it here, but those are the flies that I had at the Milwaukee Sports Show back in March.
Well, we're going to give them your phone number there, 262-237-1469.
Yep.
And people can reach out to you. Let's get into the other ones that you've got, because like I said, you've got some beautiful stuff. I mean, it's just pretty stuff. So let me get over and get to some of the other stuff. Now you've got flies for pike and muskie and trout, and I mean, you name it all. I'm just going to rattle through some of these just slowly while you talk, and just let people see what you've got out there, because it's an amazing array, and I can't imagine sitting down doing this myself. These lifelike images and figures that you put together with the eyes and the patterns on them, using various feathers and what have you. It's spooky beautiful. I mean, there's some sweet looking stuff.
I think one of the most important things I've done with my fly design over the last 10 years is I realized there's not a lot of hair jig makers out there anymore, because most people don't have the patience to fly fish, and let's be honest, it's a very, very, it's skillful, it's artful, I love it, but you need to have the patience for it, and some people just don't have the patience for it. But there's times where hair jigs are more effective, and they were so effective, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But once the soft plastic scene came on, it just dominated, because, soft plastics look so lifelike too. And they have that one thing that flies and hair jigs don't have, and that's the scent and the salt that's brined in there to give it that the smell and olfaction that predatory fish rely on. But that's the beauty about the hair jigs. You can take these same fly designs here in these musky pike flies that you see. You can tie them on a 1 ounce, darter head, or a bullet jig for pike and muskie, or a 4-inch version for walleyes and bass. So that's the nice thing I like about tying hair jigs. It's very effective.
Do you get many people? Not to interrupt you. Do you get many people outside of the fly community? And I'm talking about the casters. The casters come to you. Do you get much of that?
Yes, that's a very good question. I have had lots of requests over the last 2 months for hair jigs for brown trout and steelhead and king salmon on Lake Michigan. I've had a lot of requests for hair jigs for smallmouth. Yep. Even muskie too.
Oh yeah.
So it's been a fun way to increase my fly tying horizons, instead of being just limited to only flies. I feel like most fly tyers nowadays strictly are just flies only. But if you expand your range to hair jigs, now you're being a very, very versatile, dynamic tyer.
Yeah, I was talking to a good friend of mine that spends a good deal of time fishing bass over in the Lake Michigan, especially in the Green Bay area. And he says, Bob, I can't tell you how much bucktail jigs are coming back, hand-tied bucktail jigs, black-brown combinations and stuff. The guys that are picking up on this are catching a lot of fish. Now, is it because these fish have been caught on so many, stick-type baits and so many other type baits that they're shying away from them, and you're going back to this natural presentation that you get with these small jigs? Is that part of it, maybe?
Yeah, no, you're exactly correct on that. In most systems, as fish get older, they're gonna get intelligent and wise. They've seen like you mentioned, they've seen so many crankbaits, jerkbaits, and even soft plastics in their lifetime, that if they've seen it again, they're most likely not going to hit it unless the environmental conditions are there. So that's the nice thing about hair jigs and flies. They have that naturalistic response in the water that imitates, any forage fish or prey item that's in that lake river ecosystem, and that's the advantage with flies and hair jigs. Like the one I wanted to explain here, you see the one with the fire tiger and the black, purple, and the white.
Here,
that's the one with like the
let me find it for you. Hang on. Just go ahead. Keep talking. I'll find it for you.
It's the one with the multiple articulations. That's the one that's called the Game Changer. The one that has like 5-6 articulations in there. Those things are probably the most incredible fly tying system that's come out in the last decade. And again, Blaine Chocolate on the East Coast, I think he's in West Virginia. He's the one who came up with that system. And it was so versatile because you could tie multiple materials in there. But bucktail, I found, has been my favorite material to use in there because bucktail, number one, it's widely available, very easy to find. Two, of all the natural materials out there between rabbit strips and wolf fur and mink, raccoon, everything, bucktail retains little to no water. So, and it has excellent movement.
Yeah,
so,
and if you treat it properly, dry it, don't put it away wet, it has longevity too. It's really durable. Really durable.
Yeah. And like these muskie flies I tied up, for example, these are flies going out to a guide in Minnesota. These are, they're 8 inches long, but they're so lightweight, you could throw them 75 feet with a 9 weight, no problem. You know, it's the cool thing about pike and muskie flies nowadays. Like 30 years ago, fly fishing for muskies was a rarity. Like,
oh yeah.
When you hear somebody say that, even for pike, like, really? I didn't know you can do that. And it's definitely popularized over the last decade. And it's more popular more than ever. The key to a very good, high-quality pike and muskie fly, it has to be castable. If it's not lightweight and you can't cast it, then you shouldn't be tying it, or you shouldn't even be buying it from somebody. You gotta look at the materials it's made out of. That's why bucktail is probably one of the best natural materials you can use to make a high-quality pike muskie fly. And that's one thing I wanted to go over briefly here. When you're selecting pike muskie flies, I would look at the following. One, look at materials it's made out of. Bucktail is your number one material. And then there's a lot of good synthetics out there, too, that you can buy. They're very lightweight and don't retain water. But that's the thing. You want to eliminate waterlogged materials because they soak a lot of water and retain it, so it becomes very hard to cast.
Yeah, and that would be an inconvenience big time.
Because you want the fly to get down the water. That's why the old theory in fly tying, less is more. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Well, presentation with just about any facet of the sport is critical, whether it's getting it to them or getting it down to them or into the column where they are. It's all part of the game, and you've done a lot, it seems like, in study to figure out how to do that. And I'm telling you right now, the patterns and stuff I'm seeing, Mike, are amazing. So I hope that some of our listeners and some of our viewers out there reach out to you, and I hope that they take advantage of what you've taken the time to learn, because it's beautiful stuff, and they could easily put it in their boats and make it all happen. I would love. Go ahead.
If anybody ties their own flies for not just pike and muskie, but other game fish, I wanted to name off 3 patterns here that people on YouTube can research for fly tie in case you're a beginner. What I learned from these fly tiers, I've been tying flies for 20 years now, since high school, and these are the guys I learned from, and these are the greats that pioneered the sport. One is Lefty Cray.
Yep.
He's a famous fly fisherman.
Yep.
His famous pattern, the Deceiver.
Yep.
That's a very, very popular bait fish pattern. The tying techniques in that are very simple, and you can use his techniques for hair jigs too. Number 2, Bob Popovics. He pioneered the striper fly fishing sport out there in Rhode Island and on the East Coast there in Chesapeake Bay. He has a fly called the Beast, Beast, the Beast, and it's a very, very good pattern. You can tie this fly up to 14 inches long, and fly fishermen are throwing it with up to 80 feet with 9 weights. It's incredible, and they're tied sparsely with bucktail. But the beauty is you can also use it on hair jigs. And the nice thing is if you're fishing a single hook only regulation that's in a fishery, you can tie it on a big jig head where you don't have to rely on a stinger hook to satisfy the single hook only regulations. And number 3, this guy needs no serious introduction. Blaine Chocolate. His last name spelled Ocklettt. He came out with that fly series, The Game Changer. I don't remember the exact date, but it was probably about maybe in the last 10 to 13 years, I'd say. It was so hard to make multi-articulated flies because you had to use cheap like mustad. You had to use cheap mustad salmon hooks and then tied materials on them. They use wire cutters to bust off the shanks, and it got expensive. But now with these new Waddington shanks that are out now, it makes the system a lot easier to tie on.
Well, I can tell you one thing. There's going to be some people reach out to you for some more information, if nothing else. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
I think I would like to have you back. I would like to maybe sit down someday with you and professionally tape some of the processes that you're doing and see if we can bring even more information to the consumer. I think that would be so cool. I really do. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I appreciate it greatly. You have a great day, and send us some pictures.
Definitely will.
All righty. We'll talk to you later, Mike.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Bob.
All righty.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
All righty. Like I said, folks, the Canadian Concierge Anglers Network, is free. So all you have to do is email bob.m@fishandstickstv.com and tell us that you want to get on the list. Now, what that list does is that helps us put you together with the pros that we have on staff. Now, again, we're not going to Canada right now. The border's closed. But that doesn't mean you still can't get the information. So when that border does open, you can take advantage of it. We've got fishing down here in the lower 48, folks. Let's be honest about it. I've got pros from state to state to state willing to and very interested in teaching you what you need to know about the fisheries, how to take advantage of them. So that being said, just be aware. The Concierge Anglers Network can email bob.m@fishandstickstv.com and we'll get you on board. Folks, we'll be right back after these words. We're going to call up our last guest for the day. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. We're dialing the number. Let's see if she's there.
Hi, this is Gloria.
Hi, Gloria. This is Bob at 5 at 5 Live. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, absolutely. First, I've got to ask you, were you out fishing this weekend? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Off the dock, though.
Off the dock. Okay.
Not in the boat. It was a little cold for that. Yeah.
No, it was cold. It was brutal cold. So I understand you have a question for me.
I do. You know, there's a debate often when I'm talking with people that fish, and the debate is between artificial lures versus live bait.
Wow.
And I'm wondering, with your years of fishing achievements, I'd be interested to hear your take on one or the other or both.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's a deep subject. To be honest with you, there's a lot of variety in the answer, and here's why I say that. Let's go to the most prolific fish in the lake. Let's start there. If I were dealing with panfish and crappies, for instance, and that were my target, I would not be opposed to using live bait. Fact is, it's probably the way to go in most cases. Sunfish, for instance, live bait, meaning worms, very popular. As you move up the spectrum, however, and start entering the game fish region, now you pick up a situation where not everybody agrees. And by that I mean it becomes an ethics call more than anything. Walleye, for instance, let's just use walleye, for instance, state fish, everybody likes to fish them. Walleye is the type of fish that's considered by many as table fare. It's a game fish, but it's considered table fare. Therefore, a lot of people use live bait, whether it's crawlers or minnows, leeches, whatever the case may be. They use them in conjunction with whatever rig they're using, whether it's a jig or a spinner rig, and that's very acceptable and very productive, to be honest with you, very. But when you start moving up that ladder a little further and you get into the smallmouth and largemouth, now you find a separation. The bass fishermen who are pretty serious about bass fishing will oftentimes, like probably 90% of the time or better, go straight to hard baits, soft plastics, things of that nature. They will stay away from live bait. Some of that is, some of that is just personal in the sense that, like myself, for instance, I don't ever fish bass with live bait, and a lot of people are of that nature. Now, let's jump cut there for a second. If I were in Florida and I were with a guide would not at all worry about putting shiners on and fishing big Florida fish on shiners, and they probably do it in other places too. So again, it comes right down to who's fishing and what you're fishing. Live bait for northern pike and muskies is northern pike more so than muskies is probably accepted. In the live bait in the pike world, they use dead bait. They don't use as many live as they do dead, and they'll bottom fish them late in the season. The muskie fishermen who come on that choose to fish with sucker minnows are doing it for an entirely different set of reasons. The muskie is a very selective predator. It will engage most of its senses when that water temperature gets very cold in order to commit to a presentation. And that being said, somebody that's got a sucker out has a slight advantage, if not a large advantage, over somebody pulling a blade bait or pulling a crankbait or things of that nature. Now, here's what they do. The common practice: they will fish 3 in a boat, for instance. One of the 3 will draw the short straw, and they will have the sucker out. And the other 2 anglers in the muskie world now, the other 2 anglers will fish with artificial lures. The artificial lures are better at pulling the fish to the boat. They'll follow them. They're a curious fish, so they'll follow these lures to the boat. And once they do that and they drop off, then they find the sucker. And if everything goes right, it's game on. So you have a number of different ethics involved and techniques involved depending on who you are and how you're fishing. A good bass fisherman can easily put a limit of fish in the boat. I'm not saying he's going to put a tournament limit in the boat, but he can easily put a limit of fish in the boat on artificial. A recreation fisherman could achieve the same type of goal, same type of achievement by using live bait when the artificial becomes, it's just easier for that person who fishes once or twice a month to go do it. So it comes down to skill sets, it comes down to preferences, and there is some physiology involved. Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Well, thank you.
I tell you one thing, there's nothing wrong with catching a fish on live or artificial. As long as you're catching the fish, that's the name of the game. Getting on the water, enjoy those resources, get out in the outdoors, get in the boat, take that loved one, significant other, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case may be, get them out there and get the kids out there, teach the kids, get them away from the computers. And this is one way to do it, and hopefully that's what we're trying to do here on 5 at 5, is get more people involved in the sport. Gloria, I want to thank you for calling in. Good question. I know I was all over the gamut on it. Probably
no,
didn't even
that was
answer
interesting. Thank you.
But it comes down to a personal judgment. It really does.
Okay.
It's just that crazy of a deal. So again, thanks for watching. Tell your friends you were on and see if we can get some people.
I will. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Like we were talking, folks, there's so many variables in the sport of fishing: live bait, artificial bait, trolling, casting, flies, jigs, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, bucktails, you name it. It's all part of the game. And what we want to do in each and every week is discuss these. I don't know everything there is to know about fishing. I'll be first to tell you. If I don't know, we're going to shelve the question and we'll find somebody who does. As a matter of fact, mark June 6th on your calendar. That's Monday, June 6th. I've got a very special guest that's going to come on with us. And one of the most perplexing things in fishing are going to be discussed with that gentleman right here at 5 at 5 live on Monday, June 6th. So mark those calendars. Don't forget. And furthermore, when you are online, please drop us some comments, drop us some notes, help us along, and don't be afraid to give us that information so we can get you on a show. That's what it's all about. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook. Like I said, Casey's working behind the scenes. She's putting all this stuff together. I'm not a master of this whatsoever. Casey's got her hands on it. Give her a big kudos in those comments, guys. If you don't, I might crawl through your telephone lines and ask you why you didn't. So with that being said, I want to say goodbye to everybody. I want to say thank you for tuning in this week. And it is my pleasure to sit in front of this camera and share with you fishing experiences that everybody can do if you just get a rod and reel in your hand, buy the license, go fishing, have some fun. Here's the people that make it happen for us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848.